It's always word of the day.
I've got today's word of the day.
Yeah, I've got that.
That's not you. Anyone want to put money on the word of the day being metaphor?
Yeah, it is. No way.
I bet $2,000.
I bet $2,000 you're right.
I'm glad you said that because I have the wrong notes.
Hey. How did this person fuck away?
I bet it's like.
That's literally right there.
I'll bet you $5 metaphor.
You caught on to our agenda.
Why did you
Yes,
tell her
metaphor.
that? I couldn't even find. I know. Parker.
Okay, I know that you know what a metaphor is. You've been learning about metaphors for a long time, but let's get the official definition written down. So I'm going to give you the long one, and then I'm going to give you a short version to write down. It says a figure of speech in which a word is applied to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable. So it's anything that is not literal. So you can write down, and this is very vague sounding, but a thing representative. Yeah, exactly, something else. That's what a metaphor is. And I have students kind of get confused about this concept. So let's pretend that everything that falls within this box is metaphor. There are specific kind of metaphors called similes. Similes are still metaphors. They're just metaphors that use the word like or as. So it's not as tight of a connection as just this kind of metaphor. Also within metaphors, there's something called metonymy that is a metaphor, which is also meant not literally. And then there's one called synecdoche that is a kind of metonymy, and it just goes down from there. So, but they're all metaphors. Thank you so much, Lexi. They're all things that are not meant to be taken literally, right? So yes, when you can be more specific, call it a simile, but just know that it's still technically a metaphor. Our metaphor that we're going to use is from the book. Actually, let's do a different one first. Here's one. Let's keep it light and positive. Dying is a wild night.
Yes, very light.
And new road. All right, that's the metaphor to write down. I thought I was going to do. Can't do it. Sorry about that.
If you're not feeling well, though, I do have temporary masks. What I have heard is that there's something going around that is not COVID. People have been tested for it, the ones who are not feeling well, but there's some sort of throat bug going around. So if you're not feeling well at all, I don't want to get COVID, but I also don't want to get the throat bug. So I've got masks.
I'm
All right.
into everything.
I'm sorry. All right, dying is a wild night in a new road. This is a quote from Emily Dickinson, a poet, and it uses two different metaphors. And last time we talked about ways to start interpreting symbols. The same thing applies to metaphors. So you've got the thing being represented, right? And now here are the two metaphors. There's a wild night and there's a new road. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna do it the same way, but a little bit faster than we did last time. So tell me about wild. You did this with wild rosebush actually last time. So yeah, Taya. Free
Nature.
of nature. Uncontrollable. Yeah, Ashton.
Untamed.
Untamed. Noah. Unpredictable. Chaotic. Oh, I like that. Unsupervised. All these unwords. Anything else we want to add to that? Free. You got free. What if you go to a wild party? Crazy. Animalistic. That sounds like a good party. Fun.
Out of control.
Out of control. I've got
Oh,
uncontrollable,
sorry.
but out of control. Did someone say toga?
Okay.
I'm not gonna put that under wild. I think that one's a stretch. All right, tell me about night.
Dark. Spooky.
Mysterious.
Mysterious.
Better.
Better?
Better than day.
Why?
Because you're asleep.
It's like relaxed.
Sleep.
Quiet.
Doesn't it represent?
Misunderstood.
Time slows down.
Calm.
Wait, what?
Yeah, okay, cool. Tell me about ending.
So it like, well,
Girls are.
every kind of winter solstice or like every time that you have those celebrations of seasons, it's like, well, the night means it's over, so.
Good. So it's the end of the day. It's like the ending of something. I like that a lot. Anything else about night we want to add? I like that. So if dying is a wild night, the way that you can decide what this metaphor means is you can think about all the qualities
It's a fun end.
of the metaphor and you can see how it makes sense that they fit together, right? It's freeing and it is a nice ending. Or it's uncontrollable and spooky. There's different ways of seeing it. And do you see how wild and night both have positive and negative characteristics? They're both kind of neutral. They're not neutral terms because neither of them do you feel like, oh, this is just like a boring middle of the road word. They just have fully positive and fully negative qualities to both of them. So you can kind of like see the ambiguity in that metaphor. Let's talk about new road now. What does it mean when something's new? What qualities does it have? Fresh,
Better.
nice, untouched, maybe better,
No, that's not true.
Desired.
beginning,
Desired.
desired, pure, good one.
Young.
Young,
Some negative ones too.
okay, yeah, tell me negative ones of new. Noah,
Unknown.
unknown,
Expensive.
Expensive.
ignorant, uncertain, expensive. All right, cool, tell me about roads.
Journey. Black.
What was that, black? Black.
You're gonna tell me the road outside front school isn't black?
Blacktop. All right, cool. What else?
Unpredictable.
Unpredictable.
Long.
Driving.
Illegal.
Scary driving.
Wavy.
Long could be curvy and wavy.
Mm.
A path.
What was that? A door?
It's like a doorway to a new place.
Oh, interesting. So a road could be like sort of, I'm gonna call it a pathway. Is that all right?
Portal. Like last time.
Yeah.
Street.
Street is another word for road, but so I don't know that it's satisfying in what?
One day,
Adventure.
when new blacktop is on.
Scrape my knee.
Dangerous.
Unless it's Lightning McQueen's road.
I like his house.
All right, cool. So then when we're thinking, oh, Ashton, yeah,
And then.
unending.
That's not true. I thought that ended.
No.
Oh. No,
Yeah.
let's add it. There we go.
Use iron rock.
Okay, so then when we're trying to think about what that metaphor means, we can do the same thing. Okay, it's new, it's fresh, that's
Fresh,
nice,
dangerous.
but it's also unpredictable. Or it is unknown, but it is also satisfying, right? And we can kind of see the way that new and road works the same way that wild and night works, where there's like a contradiction there and whether we see it as a positive term or a negative term. So what you're gonna do now, talk to the person next to you, figure out what the effect of these metaphors are. That's what you're writing down on the paper. So what are the effects of the metaphors of wild night and new road, comparing those to dying? What is she trying to suggest dying is like?
Yeah. But I was thinking, I don't think this is exactly what she's looking for, but like saying dying is makes you sound more confident instead of like dying is right. So specifically a metaphor instead of a simile. I think
Oh,
it's better.
we could say a confident knowledge. Confident knowledge of the free.
It makes me think that death can be seen or kind of like as bad and good, I guess, which kind of seems right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm hoping from this that you can see that there is so much to say about metaphors. When a writer uses a metaphor in a piece of rhetoric, it is a gift to you as a writer, because you get to write about all this stuff. What she does with this metaphor is she is saying there is not one way to interpret this. If wild can be both like very, very negative experience and a very positive experience, that means that death can be all of these different things too. Death can be you can see death as a fully positive thing or as a fully negative thing. You could see the new road as something negative, or you could see the wild night as something negative. You could see one as positive and one as negative. There's all of these different ways of interpreting it. So when you're trying to like pick apart what the effect is of a metaphor like this, you can't just say, oh, wild means free and night means spooky. You also have to acknowledge that wild means scary and night means restful, right? You can't just say it is all one thing or the other, because the metaphor contains all of that. All right, did you get lots written down under effects then? Just a whole bunch of stuff under effects.
It's so effective.
All right, awesome. Then let's look at a metaphor from the actual book. But before we do that, if you have your paragraph printed, you want physical comments on your paragraph that was due today, take a second right now and go put it in the drawer. Is there anybody who printed it? Okay, yes.
I actually turned it
Yes, thank you for reminding me.
I totally did. I turned it history.
I gotta see also, I had some people that turned in their disclosure but did not sign up for Remind, so I haven't given you credit yet. All right, so I got Abby Harker, Rachel Nelson, and Sarah. Did you sign up for the Remind yet?
What?
Okay, let's talk afterwards about Remind. Rachel, did you sign up yet? Have you gotten my reminds? Okay, there's some of them that I'm just not seeing, so I'll make sure to give you credit. And then Abby.
I'll do it right now.
Okay.
Always this way.
How could you?
No, I know Ada Johnson. That's a lot.
Oh, good for him.
And you're signed up for Remind, right?
Yeah.
Have you been getting my reminds?
Yes.
Okay, cool. It's really, yeah,
Okay.
it'll be helpful. Okay, if you've got your copies of Scarlet Letter, we can all go to this part together, and if not, I'm just going to read it out loud. Was your history teacher so impressed?
She didn't really care, but we were talking about like the Puritans, and I'm like, so did you know? It was fun.
And she was just like,
She's like, oh, that's a classic, and then she like moved on. Like,
that means she hasn't read it.
Scarlet Letter.
I'm calling her out.
She goes, does anybody else have a Scarlet Letter? And I raised my hand, and I looked around with one other person.
Maybe they're in honors or
If you have read
AP.
This classic piece of American art.
That's right.
Okay, open up to chapter 3.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
And if you don't, if you don't have your book, you can just look at somebody else's or just listen, because we're just gonna look at this metaphor. So it's called the recognition. So this is the chapter when we see Roger Chillingsworth at the edge of the woods and he is recognizing his wife with some other guy's baby in her arms up on the scaffold, right? And it says, at his arrival in the marketplace, this is 3 paragraphs in, at his arrival in the marketplace and sometime before she saw him, the stranger had bent his eyes on Hester Prynne. It was carelessly at first, like a man chiefly accustomed to look inward, and to whom external matters are of little value and import, unless they bear relation to something within his mind. Very soon, so basically he was just, a quiet nerd type. Very soon, however, his look became keen and penetrative. A writhing horror twisted itself across his features like a snake gliding swiftly over them and making one little pause with all its wreathed intervolutions in open sight. His face darkened with some powerful emotion, which nevertheless he so instantaneously controlled by an effort of his will that, save at a single moment, his expression might have passed for calmness. All right, so the part I want to look at is that part where a writhing horror twisted itself across his features. Inside this box, we might also put personification as a kind of metaphor. It twists itself across his features like a snake gliding swiftly over them. So just like we did over here with this set of metaphors, let's think about snakes. At this point, we're just getting tons of practice making free associating about objects, right? But I promise it does become useful when you're writing about it. Ashton? Evil. Snakes are associated with evil. Why is that?
Satan, the devil.
Loki.
What qualities does the evil snake have in the Adam and Eve story?
Deception.
It's
You just slide on.
Tempting, yeah. Hang on. Twisted. Over here, I'm gonna say
Slytherin.
venomous, slivery, or did somebody say Slytherin? Scaly,
Uncontrollable.
Cold-blooded killer.
No legs.
They're very good huggers though. That's a joke, by the way.
constricting.
Pet.
Yeah, like,
I have a question that's really unrelated. I don't know if I got this correct, but is the reason Hester Prynne doesn't love Chillingsworth is because scoliosis?
I mean, okay, so that's one of those parts of this book that is super problematic by our 2021 standards, which is that this book uses disability, something like a hunchback or scoliosis, right?
Because she says, just in the paragraph above, it was sufficiently evident to Hester Prynne that one of the man's shoulders rose higher than the other.
That's how she recognizes her husband.
Yeah, that's okay.
So I don't know that if that's why she hates him, but it is one way that the book tells us that he's evil. And that is such an old, really offensive trope. The one that just got really blasted for this lately is the new version of The Witches. You guys seen the trailer for that or seen that movie?
That movie.
So the witches in the Roald Dahl story, they have disfigured hands, so they look like claws. Well, there are lots of people in this world that have hands that look like those witches' hands. They have, certain kind of conditions where they have to have surgery to form fingers, or they have 3 fingers or whatever. But that movie got in huge trouble because it uses that as a sign that they are evil and disgusting, and we don't want to look at them. So there was a huge campaign against that movie.
Well, that doesn't.
How about we just suck it up and let it go?
They don't have claws though. In that one, they have hands that look very much like the people who have real
Yeah, so
conditions.
that was the problem,
Yeah.
because Roald Dahl actually didn't write that. He wrote
claws.
Yeah, he wrote literally just the fingernails, and they were like, let's deform the hands.
Yes,
That's why
exactly.
they're getting in trouble, not the original movie.
Yeah.
Because the original
Grow up a
movie,
little.
Yeah, it's the way to recognize
Yeah.
evil, right? So for hundreds of years in literature, that has been the way we recognize evil. So if someone has a hunchback,
I
for
guess
example,
evil.
Richard III in Shakespeare or Chillingsworth in Scarlet Letter, it's a little literary clue that this person is going to be associated with the villain role. In some books, some old-fashioned classic books that are very good, they do a little bit of job of oh, maybe the fact that he has been criticized for having this deformity his whole life has led him to behave a certain way.
Oh.
That happens with Richard III. But with Chillingsworth, not really. I don't think that it explicitly says that Hester doesn't want to marry him because he's deformed. Hester doesn't want to marry him because he's like old and her parents forced him into it, you know? So the deformity then just becomes kind of a sign that he himself is twisted on the outside and inside. Yeah,
Is that like the basis of like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, just to play off that?
I think so, yeah. Yeah. Have you read that book? That's
Oh,
such a
I
great
read
book.
It's a book.
It's so good.
I haven't even watched the Disney.
If you liked Les Mis, read Hunchback. of Notre Dame.
We're
It's
doing
kind of
this for the musical this year.
Similar. You are?
Yep.
Who's that, Denise? Have you cast it yet?
Not yet. We're casting the winter.
That's the one I care about.
I've never seen
And just a little kid that's playing my love interest, that would be not disturbing.
We make it on the news.
Anyway, yeah, let's get back to snakes though, if that's all right. So, yes, sorry. It was a tangent, but also very relevant to how we see Chillingsworth
It is so
characters. So,
relevant. I was on a website the other day and they said that, I'm like, is that actually correct?
yeah, the book never says scoliosis, it says he has a hunchback.
Oh,
A
that's what I
lump
meant.
in his back, right?
I have a lump in
Shoulders
my back.
broke. One of the.
But I think in one chapter, when it's describing it, it says he has. But yeah, that's how she recognizes him. So she recognizes him through his deformity, basically. Okay, tell me about snakes. Allie Rose.
They're seen as cruel because of the way they kill, like, kill their prey.
Because they like strike.
Because they strike or they strangle them.
Ah, okay, cool.
Betrayal.
They're like unresponsive,
What do you mean?
like if you can't train a snake, I guess.
Not
unpredictable.
domesticated.
I was just gonna say it's a pet. though.
My cousin was hilarious.
Yeah,
Lexi, yeah.
I can't like. fetch.
What?
Sorry, sneaky.
What is, oh, sneaky. I was like, what does snaky mean? That's what I'm trying to get at. Parker?
Betrayal.
Okay, they're known for betraying. I'm gonna put that up here with the evil part. Maxwell?
A pet.
Yes, they can be a pet. But
The Jungle Book snake.
there's a bit of a,
They're not like a thinking that can go fetch. They're like-
yeah, there's a bit of a like stereotype about people who own snakes for pets. Like,
Wizards.
it's like a pet, but like only if you're like a little weird.
We're all
I'm not
weird.
trying to be, I'm trying to talk about stereotypes. If you own a snake, that's super cool. But I'm just saying, like, there's a kind of quirkiness.
Considering you own a snake and your neighbor laying.
And part of that is because of the snakiness of it. The way that they move is creepy. I'm gonna just go out and just say that, like, whether you own a pet or not, the way that they move is not a way that we are comfortable with. The slitheringness of it, right? The no feet part of it.
Can you imagine just us walking into class? Hi.
I wouldn't love it. They also have camouflaging abilities, yes?
Some of them.
Wait,
Oh, the like brighter colors are more dangerous.
Okay, cool. Brighter equals dangerous, and they are defensive. I love that. Yes.
My physics teacher told us the story about like this, like 15-foot long snake she found in her backyard who ate a bunch of baby birds.
Oh, that's sad, but also circle.
Yeah.
I think this is good to stay with. So let's go back now. Let's go back now to the quote. It's a look of horror that is compared to the snake. So it's not Chillingsworth himself that is compared to the snake. If you were, then we might say, oh, Chillingsworth then is definitely Satan here, but it's not him. And I do think it's an illusion. Anytime that there is a snake in literature, I've been saying this all day, there's all these different things that like you recognize after reading a bunch of books. Anytime there's a snake in literature, it's an illusion, especially like classic literature. If there's a snake, you can start to think about it being compared to Satan in the Garden of Eden. Eden is the garden. You can start thinking of that snake because there's usually those kind of comparisons. Here, though, it's the look of horror that is compared to the snake. So a writhing horror twisted itself across his features like a snake gliding swiftly over them and making one little pause with all its wreathed intervolutions, that's like twisting in on itself, in open sight. His face darkened with some powerful emotion, which nevertheless he so instantaneously controlled by an effort of his will that save at a single moment his expression might have passed for calmness. So the look of horror that passes over his face is described as a snake. Why do you think that is an important metaphor for Hawthorne to be making here? Yeah, Alex.
Because it makes his expression of horror like slow and very like intense rather than he was shocked for a second.
Okay, cool. So there's a kind of intensity there, and it sounds like rather than he was shocked for a second, you said. So it's almost like a kind of like purpose to it, or a kind of like control to the look.
It makes us
Yeah, Abby.
I would say like if someone sees something that's like surprising to them, like the blood drains from their face, I guess, and I would say that relates to cold-blooded
Okay.
because it's kind of just like numbness.
Okay, there's a kind of draining and a kind of numbness to his expression. Okay.
I'd say that when you like
Uh-huh. Yeah, and it's so important here that it's not dehumanizing Chillingsworth himself, it's dehumanizing the expression, right? So what does that tell us about the feeling of horror? To take that next step.
Kind of sinister.
Yeah, horror is not a human emotion, and sinister is a word we use to describe the supernatural a lot of times. So there's something sinister about horror. There is something corrupting about it, and it is antithetical, opposite to being human. That like our humanity is focused in our empathy and in our kindness and in our love, but maybe this kind of whatever feeling, this horror that is sweeping over him, it's the opposite of feeling human. Preston?
later in the book, the tale is like, oh, Chillingworth is the one sinning, not me. And I think that this moment is like when Satan maybe like gets to him and possesses him, or however like person decided to do that.
Possession, I think here is really important, that it's this like brief moment where we see the thing that is corrupting him and possessing him, right? But then he finds a way to control it so that you can't tell that he is that way. And I think about horror movies. I don't know if you guys watch a lot of horror movies, but I watch a lot of these kinds of movies. I don't know why, they're fun for me. And it works that way, where you just get a little like brief snippet that like it's always like a nice calm girl that gets possessed. So she's normally nice and calm, and then for a second you see her do something insane, her jaw gets too big or something like that, and then it goes back to being nice and calm. And it's just this little sneaking look that maybe this person isn't fully human anymore. Ashton?
Gonna say like with Venom, it's sort of like it's not a immediate takeover, but sort of thing that just sort of takes the course and slowly taking over.
Yeah.
With more time, and eventually he's like fully to that.
Yeah, and I think that Ali Rose started to say too with that idea of purposefulness. It's like a purposefulness to the temptation. Like this snake, it seems to have its own motivations for possessing him. And that's why I think it's so important that we're recognizing this part of the illusion. No?
Well, we talked about how it's twisted or sensitive, like sensor sensitive. The fact that later in the, just like paragraph, it's just like he's calm now, like the way that it says he slowly and calmly raised his finger and just with it, and so he's talking to this other person next to him,
Yeah.
and he's like, hey, who's that lady? So that's like kind of the deception, the twisted.
Yes.
It's just like almost
The deceptiveness comes from him being able to like hide the intensity. And no one else can see it except for the reader. No one else in the society can see it. Hester knows who her husband is, so she might be able to make some inferences. And when he comes to give her soup, she is very reluctant to eat that soup, you know? So she might suspect that he's extremely angry to the point of being dehumanized, but no one knows it, and he has this like ultimate control over it, seems like. Or the feeling itself has enough control that it is able to make him seem normal. Lexi.
I kind of like, I do like the point you made about kind of like in the horror movies. It's gonna sound dumb, but I'm personally thinking of Bilbo Baggins and the one scene of Lord of the Ring where he's like, I want it, and then suddenly he just goes crazy, and then he's back in like just a few seconds.
Yes, I think that's a
So it's
really
kind of like,
great.
oh, sorry. It's kind of like going back to Lord of the Rings analogy. I'm so sorry, but the ring
Yeah.
possesses Gollum.
Yes, that's
And
exactly
there's
where I was
almost
gonna
like
go.
Two personalities almost. And that one personality cannot be, personality is not the word for it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
This is alternate kind of brain or whatever,
Uh-huh.
but it can't stay down forever.
Maybe impulse.
Yeah, it just kind of lashes out all of a sudden. And I think that's kind of what it was, because it was just kind of, it's always kind of been stirring there, but then it just kind of flashes out and explodes out. And then suddenly it's back to calm, like this is fine, but like that Smeagol sitting there like, no, like, we're fine, we're happy, and Gollum's sitting there like, no, we're not.
Yes, it's a complete lack of control then, but the person who has the emotion feels like they are in control. Yeah, Alios.
I feel like this makes it really hard to know if we should, like, we as an audience should pity this guy for being like cheated on, or if if this is how he actually is, and how he like may have treated like Hester, and so he may have like been abusive, or maybe this is just him in a very angry state.
Yes.
Maybe like we can't tell if this is his like, personality, or if this is just him feeling emotions.
Yes, and I think that's why it's so important that it calls it a snake, because it feels like, because it calls the emotion a snake, it feels like the snake is infecting him, is tempting him and twisting him and all of that, right? And so it kind of, we might have a little bit of pity, but we don't have pity for the snake itself. We're just like, the snake is like ruining this guy. And the snake is not the fact that she cheated on him. The snake is the emotion. The snake is the horror, the jealousy, or a desire for vengeance. Look at how much we can do with one metaphor.
It's divorce like everybody else.
Well, not then.
A woman can divorce. At least run away like Rhode Island.
Yeah, right? Just go hang out with Anne Hutchinson. She seems to
No,
be
that's
cool
what
over
they killed
there.
by India.
Yeah, I know. All right, so I wanted to go through this with you multiple times. Like we did this yesterday with Prison Door and the Wild Rose Bush. We did it today with the Emily Dickinson metaphor, and now with this snake metaphor, because I really want to convince you, when you see a metaphor in someone's writing, that is a chance for you to pick it apart. It might feel like you're picking it apart to death, but that's okay. You're coming across really interesting observations about how the metaphor is affecting the argument. So that's why we did this. And now let's do a more fun activity. Okay, so you need a group of 3. You need to be in trios. So I'm gonna let you pick your group. You can move if you want to. I'm gonna give you 15 seconds to get into trios, and then if you're not in trios, I'll just put you in trios. No big deal. It's a new school year. Don't feel lonely. Just see if you can find them. Okay, so find your trio.
Simon Kerr.
Abby, I've got you on here now.
Okay, great.
Apparently, we're in a group. Just like move. Are we moving somewhere?
Yes, and over here you can grab it on one of these stools or around. Okay, Zach, this is Sarah. Sarah, this is Zach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, whose group doesn't have a trio yet? And I don't know if everyone will be able to be in one. Who doesn't have a trio? So you're a duo. It's just you two and you two? But you don't have a group yet, Ben? Okay, I'm gonna have Ben come up and join you guys, and you guys just say duo. Does Jonah have a group of 3? Do you guys know?
Yeah, he's in my group.
Okay.
Wait, yeah.
Why don't you guys move back there? You still do need a writing service. So,
Someone need a third person.
wait, you don't have a trio either?
Apparently he's a fourth.
Oh, then yeah, come be trios with these two. Now we're all trios. Okay, excellent. Did everyone get an Instagram picture?
No.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God.
They're passing that. All right, in your trio, you are going to decide between 3 characters. You need one of each. So one person is going to be Hester. One person is going to be Dimsdale. And one person is going to be Chillingsworth. So I'll give you 10 seconds in your group. Decide which person you want to be. Okay. Abby, are you in a trio? Okay. I'll move this stuff.
Thank you.
All right, have you decided which person you are?
No, I'm undecided.
Okay, I think there are great descriptions of these characters at different points in the book. All right, so the first description, it is in, I know we all have different page numbers, so I'm just gonna tell you the chapter and then the start of the paragraph. So the first description is of Hester is in chapter 2, and it starts when the young woman. When the young woman, the mother of the child, stood fully revealed before the crowd. And the descriptions are all about 2 paragraphs long. There's a great description of Dimsdale in chapter 3, where it says, the directness of his appeal is the start of that paragraph. And Chillingsworth's description, I think the best description of him, besides the one we just talked about, is at the beginning of chapter 10. So chapter 10, just the beginning of it. So the very first thing that you should do is you should find where your character is described and read a couple paragraphs to read about their description. So it'll just be silent here for a minute while you guys read the description. You guys have to read? Perfect.
Oh, you're chilling.
Okay, so find your section. You're gonna read your description. For those of you who didn't bring your book, I'm gonna go grab some extra copies of the book, and I will be back in 2 minutes.
Are we like drawing a picture? While we're reading.
Or maybe it's like a post. Well, those are just for like, if I have to draw a picture of the guy, it's like. For like, Dimsdale. Dude, probably be And we're like, well, when she works at AC, she has like. We can just like. draw a selfie and it's kinda-
Got arrested. LOL.
Just thinking back to life. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, have you read it? Well, too late then, so we're gonna move on. So. It was too loud when I got back. All right, so you've read the description. You are embodying your character now. This is you now. You are Hester, or you are Chillingworth, or you are Dimsdale. So based on the character traits here, not necessarily based on what they're doing, but based on their character traits, you are going to now pretend that that Instagram existed back then. That's the way we're supposed to. Instagram existed in 1642, and you are posting about the events that happen at the beginning of the story. So these events include Hester getting thrown in prison and Hester being put on the scaffold. That's sort of what happens here at the beginning. So you're going to post from your character's point of view. If you are Hester, you are drawing a picture of what she would post about these first few chapters of the book. If you're Dimsdale, what would he post? It doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to be great art.
Oh, that's.
What you are trying to convey to me is that you're able to convey the characteristics of your character that you're embodying through an image, and through an image that represents the first events in this book. You can think of a profile picture and a profile name, and then underneath you're going to write a caption. Any questions so far? Awesome. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to do this first part. Just a heads up, sorry, just a heads up, you're gonna have to justify the artistic choices you make with the descriptions that you read, so. It could be color if you want it to be, I've got art supplies. Hang on.
I'm still thinking like this next book. Like quote some scriptures about how it is bad.
Yeah, if you'd like to use colorful.
But
So now I know I can think she's like.
I like mine.
Arthur.
But just like, I like to imagine just now.
Isn't that cool? Like I love.
Ooh. What books do I have?
So wait, is this digital or is this?
Looks like it.
Okay, so now.
They're like sending something. Like a happy family.
Chili.
Obviously, he has trouble with hair.
That's one of my friends. There's Abby Chili, yeah. Roger Chili.
Oh, like you. Chili nacho. Like the thin, maybe a mine. Gonna do the old square one.
Still, but I'm gonna show you the next part of this. So here's my drawing. I'm Hester. I'm representing what it was like on the scaffold from Hester's point of view. So I'm not really focusing, you could, I mean, there's lots of ways to do this. I just know that Hester sees Pearl as a kind of, she calls her pearl of great price, right? Like I paid a lot for this baby, but like now I've got this baby. And even if she is a little creepy sometimes and I look on her with suspicion, Pearl is what brings her meaning to her life. So here I've decided that she's kind of taking like a selfie of the baby up on the scaffold so that we're focusing on Pearl rather than on anything else. But she also seems to really accept and embody the Scarlet A itself. So she's not going to shy away from including that in the picture. So I've got that there. So when I am looking at my description of Hester, it says a few things. When it's talking about the A, it talks about how it's like fantastically embroidered. And so I chose to, and I did it very quickly, but to fantastically embroider it. So it shows like ornate, it shows that she takes some pride
This is the most terrifying thing I've ever drawn.
in her looks. It shows also that she's embarrassed, but she's not shying away. She's not avoiding her guilt. All right. So I've made a little annotation to my image. I have this little arrow that points to the artistic choice I made. I have a quotation, and then I have a little bit of commentary on my quotation. That's your next step. You're going to do 3 of these. So you're using the description that you had down here. You're using that description to comment on the choices you made. And those can be artistic choices, like I could comment on why I chose to center Pearl. You could also make choices about your caption. You could justify the choices on the caption. I'm hoping that you can just kind of fit this in on the front because we're doing something in the back. So you can write tiny little annotations about how you're justifying this. Each of them need to have a quote and then a little commentary on the quote. Does anyone have any questions about this?
Where are we writing it?
You're just annotating your own image. So anywhere on that front page where you can fit a little caption, a little annotation.
Oh, back.
The back's the same as the front. So anywhere like, you know, you got some blank spaces in the image. I know it, you have to ruin your art a little bit, but. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, so we did an activity where we kind of passed it around and commented on each other. If you're working from home, you're not going to be able to do that. So the last part of this is to flip to, well, you printed your Instagrams. So the last part is to print out another Instagram picture, and we only have about 10 minutes left. So don't spend longer than 10 minutes, but you're going to draw another picture. This time it's representing your character's perspective at the end of the novel. So again, you're using those details about your character to to kind of see the events through their eyes, and then, you know, showing what they would post on social media if social media existed in Puritan times. Okay, hope that's clear. If you have any questions about today and what you're supposed to be doing, email me sooner rather than later.